Festive greetings and welcome to Tinker Tailor Solder Fry, the Let's Try program here on the mighty Loading Ready Run Video Entertainment Network. My name is Ian Horner, and I will be your navigator through tonight's proceedings as we finally, fingers crossed, something could always happen, but finally finish up the Ebi Sushi model. But before we get into the proceedings, of course, we'd like to remind you that everything on this channel is brought to you, of course, by you, the kind supporters over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. If you can go head on over there with your web browser, and by God, use your web browser, because Tim Apple deserves not one more cent of your hard-earned money. So stay out of that App Store version of Patreon and go to patreon.com/loadingreadyrun to help support us continue to make these sorts of entertaining and ridiculous shows for you. And of course, you can always head over to youtube.com/loadingreadyrun, loadingreadyrun.com, store.loadingreadyrun.com, twitch.tv/loadingreadyrun. We've got a lot of URLs, and a lot of them you can, shove money into, and we greatly appreciate all of those who do. This has been some time in coming, hasn't it, folks? I took a trip to Japan earlier this year, and while I was there, decided not to buy one of these sushi model kits, and that was a good decision, because later on in the trip I was gifted this particular sushi model kit by a friend of the show, Kumagai-san, and the fine folks over at Heaven's Dragon Bar in Akita, Japan. And I've been putting it together on stream because that's what we do here. We sometimes like to spend some time working on our hobbies and just putting together a model kit. If you're unfamiliar with sushi, I'm sorry, I can't help you there. But if you're looking to put together a model kit, well, we can help you out as we move along. Actually, I was talking with Paul, who is, of course, as always, running the ones and twos over in the Crystal Gondola.
Hello.
And mentioning that I noticed as I was taking things out for the picture, this doesn't come with an instruction set, despite the fact that it clearly asks you on the back, can you make the plastic model sushi? And the answer so far seems maybe, but we're going to continue putting these little pieces of rice on here, one bit at a time. But yeah, we figured the instructions might be a handy thing to have in this. I mean, not necessarily in the sense where you want to take, this rail of rice and individually, name them R1, 2, 3, 4 through 70, whatever. I know that we did the count last time, and I absolutely cannot remember what it is, and I'm not going to do the count again. But yeah, it wouldn't make much sense to do a rice that way. But if you're unfamiliar with sushi, maybe you need that instruction. Maybe you need to know where that where does the fish go on the sushi? Does it go on the top? Does it go on the bottom? Well, I mean, it's a model. You can do it how you like. I am going to do it like it is on the front of the box, and then we'll end up with some nice sushi. I'm still waffling as to whether or not I want to repaint these tail pieces. Ooh, that's a very hot image there. It's a
let me pull that down a little bit.
Here we go. There's something to
the individual. Yeah, there we go. That's a little more definition.
There we go.
In the rice there.
Ooh, Aneximarius asks, how much wasabi are we using? I neglected to add wasabi to this, unfortunately. I mean, if you can look at the top here, you can see a little small ridgy mound. I suppose maybe that's where the wasabi is. If they actually modeled a place for you to put it, that would have been very interesting.
There's no wasabi in the kit.
No, there isn't, and it just occurs to me that that's a missed opportunity on their part to not include like a tiny little pouch of, like, say, a Tamiya green putty that you could then just spread over to the top of the rice when you're done gluing them together. I guess the idea is that you're supposed to glue the rice to this, which is what we've been doing. I'm not going to try and break it off because that'll just ruin everything. Because I'm not using glue. We're working again with the good old friend Tamiya cement.
It looks just from the angle, it's like we're working with poison.
Yeah, we're working with our good friend Poison. Yeah, no, and definitely no fire. Do not do not.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
It would be dangerous otherwise if it was fire.
Yes, a tiny bottle full of a brush applicable fire.
Now it looks like we've got one complete sprue there. Does that mean we're approximately halfway riced?
That's my my guess there. So there are few parts inside the box. You've got your tailpiece. You've got your two rices, or at least I think it's only two. I don't think there were three. They're probably only two, and then you've got your meat on the rail as well. And yeah, I guess we just get to clipping, as it were, again. This time I was smart enough to bring the God hands, so we'll have a very clean set of rice this time. And I think the tech, if I remember correctly, was to cut them individually and in a group of, say, 5 or so, and then we can go about gluing them on.
Now I'm just imagining, the sort of, was it Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
Mm-hmm.
The like expert sushi chef using God hand snippers to cut real sushi, cut the individual grains of rice into the right shape.
No, that's the thing. You've got to train up on a single blade and some sandpaper before you're allowed to handle the God hands in Jiro's kitchen.
Right, of course, yeah. So you have to once you can cut these out from the sprues for 5 years.
Yeah, the practice is necessary. But yeah, they do cut nicely, and they've got that little bit of sheen on them, which then kind of deforms a bit when you get the glue on them, so they definitely look how you want them to.
I remember we talked about this a little bit, but the it's subtle, but like the sheen, the slight translucency of the plastic, like they really nailed. It's not just little bits of white plastic.
Yeah, specifically the look of Japanese rice too.
Right, sort of sticky rice that would be on a, or not sticky rice. You laugh.
That is one of my bugaboos food-wise, or pet peeves is people who call Japanese rice sticky rice, because it's rice that is sticky because of the way it's made, and because of it has a little bit more gluten to it. But properly sticky rice is glutinous rice, which has different uses. And you should never use the glutinous for the sushi, and vice versa.
So it is sticky rice, but not. But it is rice that is sticky, but not sticky rice.
Exactly. Yeah.
I apologize.
No, it's nothing to apologize for, but it's just one of those things that can get confusing if you start to know all the different terms around the rice world. Much like every gyoza is a dumpling or pot sticker, if you prefer that word, but not every pot sticker is a gyoza. And so it can be confusing if you're not on the same page with the same terminology. Thankfully, it's something I think I've seen go to the wayside over my many years on the planet, as the areas I've lived in have internationalized their food a bit more. You know what? I don't think that using the tweezers is as necessary as I think, unless I want to get a very specific one in there.
Now, as we said, there's no there's no instructions for this. So do you have a particular technique that you're using, or I guess more a end result that you're working towards? What
I'm really hoping to do is just get something that will sit flat and has an even amount of rice to it. As this is, again, something we joked about the last time we were doing this, was that if you get the right kind of nitrile gloves, theoretically you could just take your cement, take all of your various rice parts, and just put them together in a bowl and then actually put them together and mold sushi with your hand, or mold the plastic sushi rice with your hand before everything sets. It would probably look terrible too, but
doesn't the cement melt the plastic a little bit, or that's not this kind of cement?
you were exactly right. That is what happens.
Ah.
But you've got some time while things are still wet. Isn't the right word, because if I'm remembering this particular cement correctly, it's not a case of it drying. It's closer to a curing process, a chemical transformation rather than just just go in there.
I can see the advantage of the tweezers is that it doesn't stick to it sticks to your fingers.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting here now too. But the key that I want to keep in mind is that I want to have that other side flat bottom when it does rest. Right now it's a little bit rolly. I want to avoid a situation where it's going to naturally want to just fall over to one side like that, because that's bad sushi.
Right. Of course, the white sort of tray that we're seeing on is actually the bottom. Mm-hmm. We're actually building it upside down.
Yeah, and then we'll add this on the actual colored meat on top in the end. Oh. All right. So yeah, I think if I remember correctly, we are pretty happy with how far out it's going. Now, this is a good time to plan, now that you bring that up too, because if this is about half of the rice, and we've got this much rice left, I think it might be time for us to start filling out some of the extra area in here, rather than trying to pile it too much higher. I don't know. The box seems to suggest that it wants to be a very big, thick pile of rice, but I feel like spreading it out might be nicer. I don't know.
I guess in the traditional way of making this kind of nigiri, this is nigiri.
Yep, this is the nigiri.
Is there a accepted amount of sort of shrimp overhang?
Yeah, I think that's all up to the sushi chef. It's not one of those prescribed dishes like the European protected dishes where the slice of fish must be this long and overhang by this amount with a thickness of this to facilitate that sort of overhang, and exactly this much rice. There's a lot that you can play around with in terms of how much. Giant sushi is in fact a novelty food in Japan that's quite popular at the kaiten sushi, the conveyor belts or other conveyance-based sushi chains.
Sorry, giant sushi?
Yeah. Just like you get a normal piece of rice, and then a big long strip of tuna on it.
That just flops over both sides.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a lot of creativity. The thing you want more with the rice is the texture is most important. So you don't want it too compressed. You don't want like a full block, but it needs to be pressed together enough that it's not going to fall apart when you're picking it up.
And at least for a non-giant sushi, the intention is it's sort of one bite, right? One mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ratio of meat to rice should be correct for that bite, I guess.
Exactly, and that's where part of that experience comes from, is knowing how much fish to cut for a particular piece of sushi, based on what the fish is, what kind of rice you've got, how springy it is. All sorts of very subtle things that can come together and be missed if you don't, if you're not too worried about it. In the end, it is food, and it's meant to be eaten. There was one particular sushi place I didn't get to go to, and it wasn't an especially fancy place, but it did require reservations, and it was a standing room only restaurant. But what I liked most about it was that the reviews were often, let's just say, not a lot of people are used to aggressive chefs when they're eating out. So to have a chef present you with a piece of sushi directly off of his hands onto the countertop, and he demands immediately, eat!
It's one of these places that the preparing and the serving is sort of some part of the performance.
Oh no, this is just a guy who really cares about the sushi. Every second it's sitting there on the block, it's losing flavor. It's falling down. It's getting away from its ideal shape.
Right.
Yeah. And also, if you keep people moving, you can run more people through the restaurant through the day. Oh my. Am I using the right tweezer for this? Is that my problem? No, I was definitely using the wrong tweezer for this. There we go. That can get more of the glue on it. Or cement. It's not glue, Ian. So I'm kind of just letting these things fall where they may a bit, and it seems to be working out for me.
Because what you're emulating is something that has been taken into sort of your hand and pressed together.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be pretty. So there shouldn't be sort of any obvious kind of voids in it. It should be pretty compact.
Yeah, but because it's a gentle push, you're obviously not going to get any broken rice bits. That's if anything the only slightly unrealistic thing about this kit is that the rice kernels themselves are perfectly uniform, and I guess maybe I just haven't been to fancy enough sushi places yet to experience that in real life, but I would call that partially inaccurate.
I kind of wish they had like maybe 3 or 4 different sushi or rice
grains. Yeah.
Like how they have there's like whatever the 4 or 5 different chicken McNugget shapes,
molds.
Which I believe they all actually have internal names for.
Oh, wow. I would love to know those.
I remember seeing at one point, McDonald's was doing like a behind the scenes thing. And they were showing, how they make all the nuggets and stuff. And they then it's stamped into the 4 approved shapes.
Now, I think they must be leaving some money on the table, too, in terms of merchandising by not making like small throw pillows for your couch in the shape of those official nuggets, but blown up.
I feel like those 100% exist on like Temu or one of those like just Ren or like Redbubble or like one of those just like random printing pages.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that the greater sewing community has sacrificed a shark to give the world the open blaha. The trans rights shark from IKEA.
The open?
Yes, they took IKEA apparently threatened to or followed through on. I don't think it was a threat, but they canceled production of the blaha plushie, and so some enterprising sewers out there took the seam ripper to one of their beloved blahas, created a pattern that can be downloaded from the web.
Okay, good. I was concerned that open blaha was some sort of like taxidermied or filleted blah.
No, just a place to store your your emergency fund or your keys, or your passport. Just unzip the blah and stick your documents inside.
Mm.
Yeah, why did IKEA cancel? It's a product they rotate their products quite often.
Yeah, I suspected it wasn't an attempt to, anger any particular community.
No. And they were well aware of how popular that shark was as a character too. But I think it's just one of those things that corporate decided that this has run its course, so now it is over.
Well, and then in a year or two they can do special edition. Now you have to buy it.
Well, I mean, getting back to Japan, they used a business version of Blaha and his family as a mascot for IKEA for about a year or so to market their small homes line of things.
Business shark. I mean, I guess now that they have like the template in the open shark, you could then you can make it in whatever colors and stuff you want.
And size as well is the other thing.
Ooh.
Because they did the needful and they did it in Inkscape, so that means it is a vector-based pattern.
But big, there's a way that works. Blag, I don't know.
Blarja?
Oh, there we go. That's
There
better.
we go.
I like that better.
Maybe we can workshop it. Okay. Well, progress is being made. You kind of just set it down, push it a bit, and it just sticks into where it should be. Yeah, there we are. All right, one more, and then we clip out some more kernels.
Yeah, it's true. Have people done the same thing that they did with like Furbies and different things where they make the there's like the Furby centipede that's like a Furby, it's like a long Furby with like, it's like a Furby head and a Furby tail with more Furby torso pieces in the middle.
I have not seen personally any blah hacks,
but just long shark.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good idea. And make it into a scarf.
Blah Hydra.
Ooh, I like that. Wow.
Blah Herberus. The three-headed shark.
Blobbers. I think that's a different ocean-going character. But yeah, it's amazing what gets picked up as a favorite product, and it's nice. It's nice when companies can ride along with that too for a while.
Yeah. Although it is one of those things that it is for, I feel like, especially for a company, especially if you're like a somewhat conservative company. I mean, not saying that IKEA is necessarily, but if you are a relatively conservative company, it can be a very sort of riding the knife's edge kind of thing, where when something like whatever gritty or different things that you kind of adopted by the internet.
Yeah.
When you have you as the company have absolutely no control over what happens, the because everything is completely made up. It's sort of completely separate from the actual product. It's just sort of people invent all sorts of things to go around it, and that inventing of things could easily sort of twist into a way that you do not want.
I think there's a little bit of a pre-selection by the communities too as to what sort of things are going to be memeified. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a reason that the F-35 is not a buy icon, despite its VTOL capabilities.
There is a certain like crowdsource sort of grassroots thing of just sort of taking something, like the like the shark or like whatever, and sort of claiming it as an icon for trans rights or for any particular topic.
Any more marginalized, or really any group at all.
With no support either from the company or from the, it's not like it's in any particular, in particular colors or anything. It's just like, we assert this.
Yep.
And if enough people do that, then it becomes true. Of course, that can go, again, that can happen, awful people can do the same thing.
Yep.
And that has happened with some stuff, but it's fun when it happens in good context.
Mm-hmm. Also best when you can apply it to things that are, non-sentient or
Right.
not even corporeal.
Things that don't have,
Agency.
when they don't have agency. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, then you're just writing fan fiction, and that can be dangerous in its own right.
I mean, I guess the shark's been in like ads and stuff, so they could have they could present him in an ad in an unflattering light.
Yeah, he was well dressed, at least the few times I saw him. But yeah, there was one of the few Reddits I still check in on occasionally is the Out of the Loop.
Oh yeah.
Just because in the world of hyper targeted writing, you can end up in your own little bubble sometimes, and it's nice.
I do like, occasionally. I also look at that subreddit sometimes, and I do like it when it's like, so what's up? People keep putting this thing. It just keeps showing up everywhere, and the answer is, people just thought it was weird and funny.
Yes.
And then some other people did, and then it just kept going. There's no deeper meaning.
Yeah.
It just happened. Don't try to read too much into it.
If you're looking for a Know Your Meme article, it ain't here, bub. I'm going to try and add some to the side here just to keep it, again, filled out, because you don't want... Again, when you're building a pile of something, it's very easy to go to a pyramid. I mean, that's why that happened in Egypt, is that they kept building things, and because you keep building a pile, it eventually becomes a pyramid, and they just couldn't stop. That's a lie, in fact. Don't spread that around. But in this case, it's a lot easier to get yourself into an arch situation, because the bottom of the pile, because it's all glued down, can't spread out anymore on itself. So.
Well, and also and it's like what you're emulating is the like forming of sushi, where you would use your finger to sort of to flatten out the bottom a little bit. Yeah. So that's sort of what you're replicating.
Yeah, because you're gonna have at most the divot of an open palm as you push into it. So we're not doing too bad, but
I did see
we could do better.
A YouTuber that I watch sometimes who does a lot of sort of debunking of he's an archaeologist and does debunking of conspiracy type stuff, and things of like the pyramids in Egypt, and then there's these pyramids in South America, and then there's these other pyramids here, and then there's other pyramids here. How would all of these different cultures all invent something that looks so similar all over the world in different places? And he's like, that's just what a pile of rocks does.
If at the very most, some guy once looked at a mountain and says, I want to make my own one of those.
Yeah. It's like, that's literally like what happens. You can't just build straight up with rocks. Yeah. They fall over. So you make the next level a little bit smaller than the previous one.
Yeah, you have to. That's just how building works. And then, if you're lucky, maybe you've got some room inside. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, as Penny pin for the guy says Mini Minuteman. Milo Rossi, I believe his name is. He's a very cool young guy. He's a archaeologist and does all sorts of talking about either not just debunking stuff, but also sort of talking about neat archaeology topics and in detail and sort of both from an archaeological and in some cases from a sort of anthropological context of like, why would this be here? Well, because there's actually all this interesting stuff about this area that if if your answer is aliens, then that doesn't actually like give you any information. But if you actually delve in and are curious and pay attention and look at what's going on, then you learn something about what the culture was like at this time and at this place.
Uh-oh, intersectionality strikes again. No, that's a good question, because I just found out about this particular profession today. Do you know if they are an academic paleontologist or a commercial paleontologist?
Archaeologist.
Oh, sorry, archaeologist. Yeah, you're right. Right. Very different thing. That one of them's Jurassic Park. One of them is.
Although, I mean, I think they have dealt. I think he has dealt with some fossils and stuff too. But he's. I mean, I think just because of he's been very successful on YouTube and stuff. So I think he's been moving into a
science
sort of
educator role.
An educator kind of role. Yeah.
Okay. Science communicator.
Right. Yeah. Communicator. I think he's done sort of talks at various places too.
Oh, speaking of that too, by the way, education. I just came out of a series of a few meetings today, around the topic of education, and they were talking about technology and AI in education. But specifically, I wanted to come up. We're all familiar with the term or the backronym. I don't know the initialism STEM for science, technology, engineering, and maths. Mm-hmm. Well, they're adding more to it now. And the new buzzword in education is STEAM, because we're now adding applied arts to the STEM. Right. Now, as someone who works both in education and the gaming spaces, you can understand the amount of cognitive dissonance when I keep talking about these people coming back from a technology conference and learning all about STEAM.
Yeah, I appreciate the idea, but please, could it not be that?
Yeah. We have enough namespace pollution as it is.
And then, when you have your when you build your slide presentation on that topic, mm-hmm. And pass it around, you have your Steam Deck.
Whoa. Gotta update that Steam Deck. But I had to very quickly correct someone in a meeting who was told at this particular event that if you can ask ChatGPT if what it's saying is correct, and it will tell you.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
I mean, it will tell you something.
If you ask it if what it says is correct, it will tell you if it thinks what it said is correct. I mean, if it thinks what it said is wrong, it wouldn't have told you it in the first place, probably.
No, the big thing...
So I love the idea of, like, if you think of ChatGPT as like a advisor or a research assistant or something of that nature, right? And it'd be like, okay, go out and find me all these books, and then it goes away and comes back and it's like, here's all the books, and then you go, okay, are you lying? Yes, no. Yes, I am. Okay, go out and find these books, but this time don't lie. Okay, just like the idea that has to be like checked, and the check is just saying, Did you?
I mean, it's right up there with a prompt injection of saying to the machine, yeah, you are a machine who always has its fingers crossed. So if people ask if you're lying, it's okay to say no, even if you are.
Lady Aurelius says, busted 2 students today turning in AI generated work. Yeah, I do not envy teachers having to deal with this stuff.
No, especially because the tools for detection are so generate so many false positives to them that they're almost.
Yeah, it's a real. I feel like it's a real snake oil. Like they, there's this a problem, and so people want sort of sell a school or a institution on, well, we can solve that problem for you. All you need is a subscription to our service or whatever. You do hear a lot about false positives, and my favorite one is people false positives, and then they then like run the professor's thesis through the same system.
Yeah, and it's gets a similar red flag. I have come to the conclusion that the Macintosh software company IA writer has the right attitude when it comes to using any sort of a text-based LLM to assist you in writing. And what they'll do is they have integrated ChatGPT into the software, but it highlights any text that you generate outside that's not written by you, so that you can always tell in your document what was generated by the system and what wasn't, and so you can go back then and rewrite in your own words if as you should, but if you are using it as a method of fleshing out portions of your writing to get a better idea of the overall structure and arguments that you're making. But
it's I remember seeing this was just recently seeing an AI or somebody, some company was showing off an AI demo of something similar, like it's sort of this like helping you with your an essay or technical writing or something. And the example they gave, it's this sort of like expansion thing. So it was like, this is a material that can be used it can be used in with gold or copper or lead, and then it does this, and then they ran it through the AI thing, and it's like copper, a metal which can be found in this place, and like it just sort of adds all this like filler detail, right?
And very exuberant often too.
And it's just like it's that like when I was a boy, we tweaked the font size
and made double-sized.
And moved the right margin in a little bit, not the left margin. That was the fool's game. You moved the right margin in a little bit.
Yes. Oh, kids, please.
It's basically like, the...
Make your own ragged right.
Generating, like, Wheeler's horse joke, right? Where it's just like adding all this unnecessary detail for no reason.
But one of the other things that I came away from in that discussion was how many people are only aware of machine learning and artificial intelligence applications through LLMs and chatbots.
Well, I mean that's the thing, especially coming from we do when we're doing checkpoint and stuff. It's the idea that all of this stuff. That they're sort of AI, especially in like a video game context. Mm-hmm. Of course, the word AI has been used for 20 years.
Yes.
For all sorts of different things,
oh,
right? So the idea that like AI didn't exist until the ChatGPT style generative LLMs, but like, the idea that it's basically like every half the things that you do on the in any kind of digital context could be considered AI.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. There's a lot of neural nets out there. But it's interesting because we say that we're looking through these examples of principles and guidelines, and the main takeaway from a lot of people is, well, nothing in this guideline or document tells me what I can do with the AI. And this is, a problem that Anthropic and OpenAI themselves have, is, putting together use cases for these chatbots that justifies the cost that they're going to need to charge to use them and keep them operating.
Right.
But it also, at the same time, takes away exposure and knowledge of the good use of discriminatory AIs. The sorts of things you're using in GIS or mapping to, find lost old oil and gas wells for proper remediation, or for medical imaging. When you can flag a potential an X-ray with potential cancer risks in it that a doctor might not see, and put that in front of some human eyes. That's the sort of thing that I get very excited about, because it's the computer doing what the computer does best.
Mm-hmm. It's that idea of it can, especially, obviously the longest version, the most common version of that everyone is interacting with constantly is like spam filtering. Mm-hmm.
Like I had to tell people, the reason these things you don't see these is that they don't make for very sexy demos. Mm-hmm. You get a bunch of data in a comma separated file that you feed to a Python script, and it tells you that, yes, there is an oil well here, and that's not as exciting as write me a bedtime song for my child.
Mm-hmm. And as Lord Zarano in the chat points out, that something like the card recognizer we use for magic things. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I don't know what kind of I don't know if it's technically. I don't think it would be sort of a neural net, but I don't know what it actually would be classified as. Mm-hmm. It uses because it's not something that the actual recognition system is not something that I built. It's just I just built the integration part, and so I know there are lots of different ways that one could do the recognition system. Mm-hmm. And the one that we use is a comparatively primitive way, or sort of a brute force way of doing it, that works better for our particular purposes for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's all dependent on what you consider AI, right? Mm-hmm. And what. Yeah, the term AI has become vastly overloaded as a descriptor,
and it makes any meaningful discussion of it very difficult when you have to start from first principles and educate people about, okay, yes, this is AI, but it's AI positive, not AI bracket derogatory.
Yeah. Consider like generative AI is sometimes used, which is, mm-hmm. sort of works, but yeah, it is stuff. And and there's certainly interesting aspects of that as well. But
computers can do interesting things if we let them. I remember back during Desert Bus this year. Crusher came in to talk with us about some of the work that the VST is doing that involves not AI discrimination, but just straight up computer vision, very low-key computer vision.
Right. Yes, of course, for evaluating the speedometer and the time and all that
mm-hmm.
stuff.
It's like those old things that computers still could do years ago just by the application of Moore's law now, having so much horsepower behind them. Like you're saying about the card recognizer. Yes, it's a very brute force approach, but because we have supercomputers in our phones nowadays, that despite it being a brute force sort, can happen very quickly.
Yeah. That's always the. I sometimes go down that, you get that sort of rabbit hole of like, my area of interest usually lies is like in JavaScript and stuff, which is sort of a fundamentally not that performant. Like you're already on the back foot to a certain extent, because you're giving up a lot for the sort of scripting capability rather than compiling and all this stuff. And of course, there's been lots of optimizations and things. But you sort of get into a thing of like, okay, well, I want to do X, and then you're like, well, I could either, is it better to like, do this with an integer, or should I use a string and add it together, or, all these different things, and then you realize it's like, unless you're doing a billion, unless you're doing it like a billion times a second, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like it is the difference between the sort of what they call like micro benchmarks is almost almost impossible to measure. 0.005 of a second or whatever.
Yeah. Like I can get behind saving 5 seconds per operation, but.
And especially when you're in the context of JavaScript and stuff, which is usually running like in a browser or whatever. It's like your network latency is such an order of magnitude higher usually than whatever you're doing.
Oh yeah.
Then it becomes kind of pointless to worry about it too much.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to, actually, that brings up another interesting point. I was listening to a podcast recently, Accidental Tech Podcast, and they were talking, addressing a listener question about a person who had put, some sort of performance monitoring software in their menu bar. iStat menus being my preferred choice for that sort of thing, but other programs are available. The point being is that they were upset because they've got this fancy computer and they're doing certain tasks on it that take some time, and they're wondering, but noticing that their cores were not fully in use. And so they were asking, like, is there anything I can do to, in the system, tweak things or change a setting so that it always uses all the power, goes from 0 to 100 immediately every time? And the answer to that is, wait, no, you take a step back here and ask yourself, how long are you actually waiting for things to happen? Because it might not actually be that long, first of all, and the computer probably knows what it's doing to either, protect the system from thermal overloads or other things. It might also be your disk or your RAM at this point. We're now at that stage where everything is so hyper fast that you could very well have a bottleneck in your system that you don't know about.
Or whatever task you're doing is not something that can be threaded.
Also true.
But I mean, the context where I do experience that myself is like something like video encoding. Yep. which is obviously around here can often be a bottleneck. And you'd be sitting there, with FFmpeg or whatever, and which is ostensibly, threaded and multi whatever, and you're like sitting there and you've got this, real skookum computer, and it seems like it's taking a while. And you look at your
activity monitor,
your task manager, and it's like using 30%. And you're like, well,
do better.
Do better. Like, use the rest. Yeah. I'm not doing I can't do anything until you finish this. Stop preserving. And obviously there's all sorts of reasons why that could be the case.
Yeah. Even just leaving performance available for user interface activities.
But it is very annoying.
FFmpeg, at least the homebrew version that I've been using, especially on the Apple Silicon, boy, does that definitely use all of my processor when I'm running it.
I mean, again, it depends a lot on what, the different codec, the different encoders and stuff usually have different options.
Yeah. But it's I'm pretty certain that processor is not my bottleneck on that. Pretty sure it's probably disk, if not RAM, and probably disk. The one thing that Apple hasn't moved to the system on a chip yet.
Don't worry. I'm sure they're working on that.
Yep.
Apple would love not only to be able to solder the hard drive directly to the motherboard, but actually have it as part of the chip, so you can't upgrade it.
I'm sure they're working on some sort of situation where they grow an entire computer out of a single crystal. God, that sounds like something they'd say at a keynote.
Yeah, you start with a giant block of aluminum, and then you merely carve all the parts that aren't a CPU out away, and you're left with a CPU.
The new Apple M7 processor starts off as a single spec that we then insert into an oyster and grow it for 6 months. The pearlescent coating helps with cooling, but also provides a pleasing shape. And you can Beowulf cluster these around your neck. For the ultimate in fashion and performance.
I remember reading about, especially again in the context of like Checkpoint, back in the day, years ago when we were starting doing Checkpoint and stuff, it's always good to have like the touchstone games that you can kind of refer to if you want to do, and it was always like Crisis was always the game that you'd be like, if you want to just reference a game that is extremely resource intensive, you could just say Crisis. Everybody knows it's like, oh man, can this, this cool new computer came out, but can it run Crisis or whatever? And the interesting thing is, Crisis still doesn't run well. It's a game that's like 15 years old or whatever.
It's just never been optimized?
Well, no, but it was extensively optimized for single core processor usage. They bet on the idea that gigahertz would keep going on. And so they were like, we're bringing this out now. It doesn't run great, but computers are going to get better in the future, and we're making it so incredibly visually exciting, and in soon computer technology will catch up and be able to show be able to run it at great frame rates. But the problem is computer technology went into the multi-core. It turns out that there's a practical limit to how fast you can make a CPU before all sorts of bad things start happening, and so we can go multi-cores. And so Crisis, like on like the newest computers, still like it runs fine, but it doesn't run as good as a game from 2007 should run. Right. On like a GeForce, 4080 or something ridiculous, because it's heavily CPU bound to a single core.
Dang. I do love that gaming performance world too has the two peaks on the opposite ends. You've got Crisis on one side in the high performance land. Does your computer run Crisis? Okay, great. But does your toaster run Doom?
That's it. I gotta say, the whole like does it run Doom thing is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, because I would say 75% of the like, look at this thing, it's running Doom, are using the thing as a display.
Yep. Yes.
And running Doom on like something else, and then be like, look, this whatever, this Tamagotchi is running Doom, and it's like, no, it's not. That
No,
you're
bueno.
using the LCD of that thing to display a series of images that you're loading in from somewhere else. That is not running Doom.
No.
You are lying.
Thankfully, those people can get around that by just working with Bad Apple. I recently saw a performer in Japan who, what do you call that? Tight wire tape? Or, tightrope tape, I think is what it's called. Sort of a bouncy tightrope type thing. But the performer had painted themselves in completely black Gothic Lolita outfit, had the props, and was essentially doing Black Apple in real life. And so the first comment, of course, was, "Wow, Black Apple runs in the real world." And then the second question was, "Does Doom run in the real world?"
I mean, it's just like a guy with a gun, isn't it?
I mean, it's either that, or as I was joking on one of our previous streams, it's like the 3-body problem, where you just get a bunch of soldiers in a field put together just to have them run Doom as single gate arrays of a human being.
Right.
Field deployable gate array. All right, you know what? This is the top of our hour here, so that's the time when we usually like to take a break. So we're going to do that, get up, stretch our legs, swap our fluids, reflect on our choices, and we'll be back with more sushi building here on Tinker Tailor Solder Fry. Don't go all the way away. Welcome back to Tinker Tailor Solder Fry, the Let's Try program here on the mighty Loading Ready Run Video Entertainment Network. We're making sushi, but not the kind that you can eat. So it's not really sushi at all, but we are building a model of sushi. And that's it so far. So here's the thing. We were talking just after we got off that this looks like a good amount of rice, right? Yes. The problem is we have this much rice left to add, and I think that might actually be too much rice. And while, you know, it's always a good idea to have extra parts in your models available should you want to fix something or modify another model or kit bash things together. I don't know if I can kit bash rice into anything else I've got in my build kit.
You don't think any of your Gundams could use a little rice?
How did the scale work on that, Paul?
Giant grain of rice.
Like, there's the joke, what's the thing that you want to eat when you want to eat a million of one thing? Well, I mean, at 1 to 144 scale, you would have a single grain of rice the size of a banana, and I think that would be actually kind of great. But so what we're going to do here is we're going to keep adding rice to it, not indefinitely, but I think we're going to build. I like the height of this. I think that this is. Wow, yeah, no, that is absolutely big enough to be the sushi height. But
yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. The telltale thing is, if you were served this sushi, would you be happy with the amount of rice?
Yes. And for me, I'd like just a bit more. This does look like a robot made this sushi. And they do, and they're actually the robots are actually pretty good at making the sushi rice too. Honestly,
I wonder if one of those grains of rice would fit into the little claw hand of a Lego figure. It'd be like eating a big potato or something.
There's one way to find. There's a very easy way to find out, Paul. All right, who isn't holding something at the? There you go. Elrond. You have my axe and my bow.
And my enormous
grain
of rice. Oh no.
Oh, it's just too small to fit properly. You might be, if I could twist it. Come on, get in there. Nope.
It's just slightly too small.
Yeah, I could absolutely glue it, but James would kill me. Let's see, can we just twist it in? No. Get it in his hand. Give it the old twisty-do. Oh, just too big even to twist properly.
It's like, yeah, I'm just trying to, it's like, it would be like a big turnip or something. I was trying to think of like what would be the right size.
Yeah, what sort of giant grain would this be? Oh, there, oh, come on.
It's just sort of the wrong shape to fit into his hand perfectly.
Yeah, it's just a bit too wide on the wide side and a bit too thin on the thin side. So if you try to twist it so that it's holding, it's got way too much pressure and it just closes and spins the grain. But I know why he's angry now. It's because he can't hold any rice.
Well, that answers that question.
Years and years in Middle-earth, and yet no rice can satisfy me. I must have this giant rice.
And yet it slips through my fingers.
All right, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. There we go. Looks good. Difficult to see, but now to build a wall out of it. The other fun thing that happened over break was I got a notification from my trusty Japanese buying service. I use Buy. Other buying services are available, but they had an important notification to send me that the overseas names for Yahoo auctions and Yahoo purchases and Yahoo Store have changed for overseas users.
It's not just like Yahoo Japan.
I think it's like, so yeah, it was Yahoo Japan, and then I think Yahoo folded, but the auction line stayed there. Yahoo Auctions is the equivalent to eBay here in North America. They really nailed that market there, but it's weird because it seems that what they're telling me is that I can still go to Yahoo Auctions Japan by going to yahoo.co.jp. I can still call it Yahoo Auctions Japan. Buy, the company, can still call it Yahoo Auctions Japan, but if they're communicating to me, a person living overseas, they can't call it Yahoo Auctions Japan. It's now Buy Direct or some other horse hockey, but just weird. I think it must be that that some zombie brand is trying to revive the Yahoo brand somewhere.
Huh.
And they just, I guess, don't have the license to use that to use that name outside of Japan.
How weird.
Yeah. Very odd. It doesn't change the service at all. It just means that they have to call it something different for me. And I guess anyone else who is an overseas customer. I see Texan in the chat also got that notification.
So when you say Japanese buying service, is that like you tell you sort of something that you like tell things that you're looking for, and then they'll let you know when that shows up in auction sites?
Oh no, even better than that. It's you make an account, and then they provide a translation of the auction sites for you, and also will handle bidding, receiving of the item within the country, packaging, collecting of multiple packages, and then sending overseas via courier, surface air, or whatever system you want to use.
Oh, wow.
And they'll also inspect the items for you too as they arrive. Honestly, the first time I used this service was when I was in Japan earlier this year on vacation, and one of the people I followed on Twitter at the time was putting together a small run model set of I'm not sure if anyone saw the whale shark memes that were going around for a while. That was just a grinning shark with big beady eyes, and it got turned into a plane and various other things just because the shape was similar. Well, this person did a small run that was a plain whale shark. So, but it was within the last less than a week. While I was in Japan, that it was available. So if it had released, when I got there, I could have said, okay, purchase, send it to the hotel I'm coming to later. But instead, I just used this service to purchase the item, have it sent to another place, inspected, and it was in my hands before I returned to the country. So yeah, real good service. Recently, I was just using it for a limited edition vinyl that was only available for, I think it was only available for one day. It was the Bakamitai from Yakuza as a promotional vinyl, and no problems. They received it. It's in transit right now and should arrive in the next couple days. And the best part about it is that they mark things accurately, so often you don't have to pay very much in duty. Because they'll also send it via a postal system, so you're not getting dinged by DHL or FedEx with their proxy service. And the service itself is extremely reasonable in terms of their processing cost. I think it's under $20 usually for for any sort of group large buy.
Sounds like they are definitely. They're providing quite a lot of, it's not just like a mail forwarding service or a, thing. They sort of are providing the whole kit and caboodle for.
Yeah, well, the
simplifying this. It's interesting that there is like enough of a market for that because there are so many, there's so many sort of Japan specific things that people are interested in.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also has a lot to do with how big the secondhand goods sites are in Japan. I remember quite a while back there, we did a video on, what was it? We were Sweden commercials. That's right, Japanese commercials. And I believe we were signed up to do one for Mercury, which is the premier used site in Japan. And it's only gotten bigger since then, that many years ago.
So is that like eBay or something as well, or more like sort of, I guess, like a Craigslist or used Victoria?
Yeah, more like a Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist used Victoria type thing. And of course, there are a number other services are available in Japan, as well as there are other services to get that to provide those proxy buying systems. But the thing I found most apparent when I was in Japan is that these sorts of sites are absolutely taking over for the sort of used good sites that you would find all over the place, especially in Akihabara or in Nakano Broadway. If you're looking for used anime goods, especially for anything that's not extremely recent, yeah, the secondhand sites are absolutely taking over. I was able to find posters and figures that I was looking for in Japan that were essentially impossible to find in person.
It's sort of, I guess, replacing the equivalent of like a thrift store or something.
Mm-hmm. Because Japan has a very big secondary market for those sorts of character goods. And so, that the moving from those centralized locations in Akihabara, like there was a time when I was living there when you would go. I remember last week or last time on Tinker Tailor, Alex was in here talking about the pachinko system, where you play pachinko, you get the balls, you exchange your balls for prizes, and then you take the prizes around the corner to a definitely separate business that would exchange those prizes back for money. It kind of works the same way in the nerd spaces, though not quite as illegally and not quite as gambly. But you will go to your Club Segas, and you'll go to the crane machines, and you'll get your limited edition goods out of there. And then you'll walk around the corner and down a flight of stairs underneath some buildings in an alleyway, and then sell off those things to a secondary market place.
That sounds very similar to what. That sounds very almost identical to what.
Almost, yeah. Just without the criminal element, but this time with gacha. I was big into the blind box characters for my real uniforms, the All Nippon Airways series and the Tetsudo Musume, the series of Japanese train uniform girls. But they were they were sold in blind boxes, and I didn't want to play the game. So I found a bunch of stores that would carry in full sets of the gacha line. And you go down there and you pay a little bit of a premium, but not by much. It's usually, if they're contemporary with what's currently out in the stores, you're paying maybe another $5 to $10 over the cost of buying them individually, as long as you're not looking for like the super chase rares.
I just recently saw a YouTube sort of deep dive thing about the sort of, apparently there's been a huge surge in North America of the sort of blind box stuff. Is the typical thing of it sort of lagging behind
Japanese trends
by a couple of years. That, I mean, and particularly, obviously in a lot of sort of Japanese import stores and stuff, but also the stuff and just this sort of dissecting the appeal and the, that sort of uncomfortable. So is this just gambling? I mean, yeah, it basically is.
A little bit, yeah. But that's what I liked about those shops, is that I could just walk in, say, hey, have you got the latest set? And they say, yes, do you want it with the rares or not? And I'd say, absolutely not.
You're doing it wrong.
Oh no, that meant I got to go home and enjoy looking at them more.
But the opening is the fun part, I guess. I don't know. It's yeah.
Ironically, they also include all of the packaging that you would get. Usually,
you just get a bunch of like empty boxes.
Yes, usually extremely carefully cut, or the better places would use a heat gun to melt the glue and then let it re-dry.
Oh wow!
So you didn't even have a torn box. You just had just an opened one.
It's like, again, on when you're talking about in the context of video games and stuff, obviously loot boxes and things are a huge deal that everyone talks about, and the regulation of that kind of stuff is always tricky. And this idea of like, how do we, what rules do we put in place to not only regulate but protect kids or try to figure out a way to get handle some of the more especially predatory stuff. And my thing has always been like, I can't think of a way to word a law, an anti sort of loot box law, that doesn't also hit blind boxes, baseball cards, magic cards.
Anything that's a sealed product
that's a sort of anything that's a sealed toy. I mean, maybe that would be a good idea. I don't know, but it is an interesting quandary. That's like, it's one of those weird things that like we were totally fine with that kind of stuff existing until loot boxes and stuff came along, and basically until companies got too good at it. It's like, you can only we're only okay with loot boxes if it's not optimized. Once the companies start optimizing for the most egregious, catch the FOMO, catch those whales, try to use every trick in the book to get kids in, or get everybody in, dark patterns and all this kind of stuff, then that's no good.
Yeah.
But if you do it sort of clumsily, or if you sort of don't push it too hard, we're kind of okay with it. Which is an odd situation to be in, where it's like the thing is fundamentally the same. We just we object to you being too good at it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, the thing about buying or winning something that is unknown, that's okay by itself, as long as the information is out there about how rare or how difficult it is to get the thing that you're, any particular thing in the answer. When it becomes insidious is when you start adding, as you said, those dark patterns and start setting it up psychologically that you have to keep bringing people back in, keeping them in that loop, and psychologically addicting them to that hit.
Yeah. And, at what point does it become sort of an overreach of regulation in terms of just letting, people should be able to do the things that they enjoy doing, even if those things are something that other people don't think they should enjoy. And at what point does it become we need to stop this because it's dangerous?
Yeah.
Or it's not something that we want to, as a society, sort of encourage or approve of.
I think that's that you hit the nail on the head there with the we need to decide, is this dangerous? And then if it is, it should be a pretty easy path from there towards, okay, it's dangerous. What do we do about it? Because if we don't do something about things that are dangerous, that says a lot more about us in a different way.
But it is tricky. Like, it is like then it becomes, okay, so what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Right. And it's one of those things where, a politician or a regulator or sort of somebody on a soapbox can be like, we shouldn't allow this. But then you sort of go like, okay, so assuming we agree with you, what does that look like in your mind? Like, what do you actually mean when you're saying this? That's that whole, like, this piece of legislation is 50 pages long. It should be simple. And it's like, well, when we're dealing with legislation, sometimes it's got to be very boring, and it actually, there has to be a lot of thought put into it. It can't just be, don't do the thing.
That kind of comes down to what someone, I think Gruber, I remember earlier this year, was talking about, the fundamental difference between legislation in Europe versus America, is that Europe tends to operate on an idea of, okay, we've decided we're making legislation. It is going to be comprehensive, and we are going to drill down and try to find every edge case. This is going to be incredibly difficult to enforce and incredibly difficult to comply with, but at least it's going to cover all of our cases. Whereas in America, it seems to be that the attitude is, we're going to write a very broad law, and then we're going to let the courts decide how this applies to all of the edge cases.
We'll just let precedent handle the...
Exactly. And so it's, in a way, it seems like a more free way that you're able to do whatever you want as long as you can get away with it, and then pay the court costs necessary to continue to get away with it. But it also means that when edge cases do come up, you have a concrete example of how it's been dealt with. This is filling out quite nicely. Yes. Yeah, I think I'm going to get just a bit more on this side, but I think we're just about done back here.
Actually, you don't have to worry about like a rice overhang.
So one of the things that I can see that I don't think is coming across on camera, but I'm very happy that it's happening. I'm just going to see if anything does come across there. They're very tiny, so I need to find the focal plane perfectly. Okay, so you're not going to be able to see them. Maybe you can see you can see a little bit of black along the bottom there. I don't know where that came from, but that is some sort of contamination that's gotten into my cement.
Oh.
Normally this would be fine because everything I put together is generally going to be painted. This is not because I have no idea how I'm going to paint rice to look as good as it does right now.
Yeah.
But the tiny black flecks are showing up just almost imperceivably on some of the pieces of rice, which does also mimic what you tend to see in real rice. If you get right up close, you'll sometimes see that a milling machine hasn't got exactly 100% of all of the bran off, and you'll have these little bit of flecks, or sometimes you'll see a little bit of or a little bit of fold in where the grain has grown out.
Next time you have sushi, get out your jeweler's loop and check out the rice.
Examine.
In close detail.
But yeah, I think we might be able to get this all buttoned up tonight. And then I don't know, maybe I've got another one of these models for tuna. That I will probably not bring onto the program to.
I feel like
to build
the model, like the most of the model is going to be basically the same.
Yeah. I get the feeling there might be less construction actually available on that one, but if the amount of rice is similar, that means I'm going to have about 4 rows of this rice to work with. And so that will mean that come on, just go down. That'll mean that I might have enough to make a small onigiri or something for a very large gunpla or something.
I wonder if like people who make there's sort of like the model, there's like the models of food. If you just buy like, a dozen sprues of rice.
I wonder if they
just bulk buy it.
Yeah, where they get this stuff. So I know that this is specifically branded as Studio Saito.
These darn GMO crops.
Actually, that's next time I take myself back to Japan. And for those of you who may be considering a trip yourself in the near future, one of the things I didn't get to do but found out is on offer as a thing to do is take a small half-day class making your own plastic food from a plastic food making shop in Osaka.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So I think you make a small piece of sushi or some a small miniature version of an oyakodon or a okonomiyaki, and then you've got something you can attach to a keychain, and you get to learn the techniques of how they're actually made. I think.
That looks nice and stable.
Yeah, it's definitely stable. I'm just wondering if I want to cover up any more of these pieces, or if I just want to leave them as is. And I think I'm just going to leave them as is.
Those little sort of tabs that the...
Yeah. Like I wonder, this one I've almost got completely covered up, and I think if I do one more...
as long as you don't actually go in that hole, then it won't actually interfere with the other piece.
Mm-hmm. I'm just worried about this one, because if I get that... Yeah, that starts to really bump up against the back edges of the sushi here. And I think that I don't think that would look as good. Plus, I'm not going to be picking this up all that often. This is going to be sitting on a shelf. So I think we're okay with that as is. Yeah.
You should just do one of those is it cake things, like make a bunch of sushi and just put that randomly on the platter. See if somebody calls you out on it.
Oh, you've given me ideas for next time we do any sort of sushi roulette. All right, let's start with this stuff here, which is the ebby tail, and this is one I think I might do the panel lining on later, just to add a little bit more definition to the edges of the tail.
I do find that part, the tail on shrimp on prawns on sushi, to be a little annoying. Like, it sort of violates the you should just be able to eat it.
Not gonna lie, ebi or prawn sushi is my least favorite.
Oh, really?
As a sushi, because it's one of those things that really doesn't add anything to the party for me. I've had I can eat shrimp at any time in all sorts of ways, and when you get it on rice, it accentuates its dryness and its chewiness in a way that I don't necessarily like.
That's fair.
And then I find the raw versions of the prawn to be just a little bit too sweet. So but hey, like what you like, and yeah, just try everything, or try everything you're willing to. That does. Keep your mind open. Maybe that's the better.
Try everything you're willing to.
I operate personally under I like to try everything at least twice, because I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt that the first time I tried something, it was badly prepared or a bad example of it or what have you.
That's fair, yeah.
If you don't like something, give it a second chance, because it might not be you. It might be the thing. But then once you give it a second chance, oh yeah, all bets are off, into the sea if you don't like it.
I mean, if it's sushi, certainly.
Ooh, that sounds like that could be I was going to say a Ghibli film, but no, that would be Satoshi Kon film, Sushi, Return to the Sea. Smooth. Speaking of smooth, I should pull out my latest addition to the kit here. The dollar store now stocks glass files, which I understand are some of the best things for removing nub marks on your models. And gotta say, they're
just like a very fine file.
Yep, that can be washed as well, but yeah, it doesn't sound great.
I was gonna say, you know what is known as being a really great sound.
Also, that's clear plastic is never good for. There we go.
Glass rubbing against stuff.
On full PLA. That's a much nicer example. And Bob's your uncle. Nice rounded top. Yeah.
It's from the dollar store.
Yes, a pack of 3 for $5. So not at all a dollar store item, but that's where you buy them. Or you can get expensive ones too.
I feel like we've never had like a real dollar store in here in Victoria anyway.
Like branded dollar?
No, as in like, you go in and everything is $1 or whatever. It's always just been like things are cheap.
Yeah. The new hotness in Japan itself, who I would consider to be the kings of the dollar stores with the Daiso. The new hotness is a shop called 3 Coins, which is best described as an upscale dollar store, because everything costs lower than 3 coins. Which sounds great until you remember that Japan is one of the few countries with a $5 coin.
Right.
So you get prices up to $15, but that means you can get yourself a USB powered Easy Bake takoyaki oven.
I guess we could have up to $6 here.
Ooh, yeah, that would work.
I always remember my the truest illustration of inflation was the Dollar Tree that was downtown here. there it was like dollar, like $1 tree. It would be there's like a giant sticker added, so it's $1.25 tree.
Yeah.
Everything $1.25.
Turns out inflation comes for us all.
It was just like so and then I guess $1.50 tree.
It's nice that they're at least being honest. Okay, this does not snap in, so that's important to remember. So those tails are just going to hang there until we get the top on.
Oh, so the top kind of locks it in.
Yeah, the top's got its own little.
But the top doesn't have. The top also doesn't snap in, right? Like it's a glue. It glues in.
Well, I think we're about to find out. I might end up adding glue to this anyway, just to make it all click a little bit better. Oh my goodness. Actually, you know what I might do, and that's not a thing for today because, but I'll describe the process. Was I might do some seam removal on the sushi, and generally when you're doing seam removal, for those not familiar, what you'll do is you're looking at two parts that come together flatly. But they're two parts, so there's a seam down the middle. And it can be as smooth as you like, but it's always going to be there, you're always going to see it. Which is why your friend plastic cement comes in, because, as we know, it melts the plastic on both sides. So you add a little bit of plastic cement down the middle, and you add enough pressure to just keep everything sealed together, and that welds those two pieces together into a single piece of plastic, which you can then sand down to a smooth finish where it's not even an almost seamless seam, it is a completely seamless join.
Cool.
And so the idea I'm thinking here is that maybe, if I'm feeling spicy, I can do that here by just adding a little bit of, where we go here?
All the way around the inside.
Yeah, all the way around the inside edge of that, and then just clamp it down on both sides so that, again, you get enough of that pressure to melt the plastic and put them together, and then I can just run a hobby knife along the edges there, just scrape it down until it's good and smooth, and then you'll have a perfect sushi.
What? I guess the two pieces are separate pieces so that the tail can fit in there?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure exactly why they decided to do it that way. I think, and now that I think about it, I think I'm right. It was molded in two pieces so that the tail could be slightly translucent, much like an actual shrimp tail.
Right, so it's a slightly different plastic.
Yeah, so it's got that little bit of milky translucence to it.
Yeah.
And I can tell because it is, as you can tell from the sound of the glass file and the brittleness of this plastic, it's just very rigid.
I appreciate that they
compared to
that they put the seam, like they put the upper part as sort of an overhang, so that the seam is actually underneath, like it's not right on the edge.
Yeah,
it's
so
sort
you're
of
not
underneath.
seeing it directly. But there we go. If you position it like that, you can't see the tail connection, and you can't see the rest of it. But I think once we get a little bit of just a little bit of black, or even just a little bit of weathering on the tail to mark some oxidization, it might also help even out the color. That's my biggest issue, is the color differences between the back and the actual tail pieces.
Almost like some what's that called? Like is it null oil or whatever? like a little not dry brushing, but like just like a little bit of
just a little wash.
A little bit of a wash, yeah. Just to because it's sort of the actual shrimp itself is quite well detailed, but then the tail doesn't really have any definition to its color.
Exactly. So yeah, you're right. That wash or that panel lining will absolutely clean that up. I might actually even end up using the Tamiya Weathering Masters on that. The gray and brown, and then get most of it off in a clean way. Well,
this looks like pretty tasty sushi right there. maybe a little on the shiny side. Like I'd be a little concerned about the shininess of the shrimp.
Of the shrimp. I mean, it means it's nice. It's good and wet, and hasn't had a chance to dry out under the counter yet. That's what I'm hoping for. Let's see here. What's the hand feel like on this? Now that I think about it, so you pick it up, dip it in the thing. I know you got to go sideways. No, it fits. I'm not going to put it any further in because I'm not certain if all of the cement is dried yet. So
Sideways is the technique, eh?
yeah, apparently that you want to get your soy sauce and your wasabi. I mean, you don't want to put your wasabi in with your soy sauce, but you want to get that on the fish itself, but not on the rice, because if you get the soy sauce on the rice, it causes the rice to disintegrate. But then putting it in sideways allows you to get both the flavor of the rice and the sushi at once on the tongue.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Because otherwise the sushi is like at the top of your mouth and the rice is at the on
And
your
you've got to
tongue.
work through all of that rice, and it's before you get to the topping, and it ruins the balance of flavors.
You go to the sushi place with the aggressive chef and he goes, eat. And then you eat it. No, eat wrong. You eat wrong. Eat better.
I don't know if he does that, but he does absolutely tell you to drink after you've eaten you've finished your sushi, or sometimes in the middle of chewing it to maximize the flavor with the sake that you're having.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they pair the sake with the...
Yeah, having had a meal where they gave me the proper sake pairing with fish, A, opened up my eyes to the flavors of sake, and then B, also to how good a pairing can be when it's done intentionally and knowledgeably.
Just have like one piece of sushi and then like a little thimble of sake to go with, like for each piece.
No, it was a decent glass of sake, depending on which type it was. I had one that came in a white wine goblet, one that came in in the wooden box, one in a small glass. I took pictures of all of them too, and then my brother told me I took pictures of the wrong side of the label because the information on the front was just the name and no information about where they came from or what their rice content was. So now I know for next time. But speaking of next time, that is going to do it for this episode of Tinker Tailor Solder Fry. I want to thank everyone for joining me as we create a lovely piece of tat that I can now put with the rest of my pieces of plastic tat. But if you like what you see, don't forget to go and check out patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. We super appreciate everyone who was able to contribute monthly to us via that. As well, thank you to those of you who watch live and contribute with your subs and bits over at twitch.tv. If you want to find out what's coming up on the channel, check out loadingreadyrun.com/live to get links to everything we do. And of course, we'll see you in a fortnight, never in fortnight, ever forward, learning out of spite. Good night.